one of our antennas, and we'd like to do it with a lot of power on 2 meters, and it looks like you're the guy that could do it. Hey, no, it's not in my vocabulary. I said, let's do it. What did he do? I told you I had some blessed parents. He sends over 128 elements on 2 meters. We had a spare lot beside our house, which you saw with the 110 footer. That was still there, of course. This was 50 foot. It was 50 foot high and 50 foot wide. Those are J-beams, 16 elements of them. I also, it's hard to see, but we had a prop pitch motor from a B-29 above my head there that we could rotate it and send it to the moon. There were 2 of them in there. And I had met up with a guy on 6 meters in Oklahoma City. Now, Marissa, Illinois is about 50 miles southeast of St. Louis. And he was down in Oklahoma, and we're working on 6 meters. And he told me, he said, hey, I'm doing moon bounce. I got this dish from Army surplus, and we're playing some games. He said, you should be able to do something with that 128 elements. And so we did. Nothing great, but we did make contact. And for several weeks, it was amazing to this young kid. Oh my gosh, whoa. Well, I just can't tell you how fascinating all of that was to me as a young kid. But I maintained my organ career. I was still going because I had a lot of time at day, but at night I was building things. First of all, we were still learning to listen as we were voicing and tuning that Fox organ. And that middle one is a B3 that I bought 2 of them. I made a 3 manual through keyboards, and that marimba, you see, the piano, the drums, all of that, they were operated from solenoids that I had built from the keyboard, just like in a theater organ. A theater organ has all these instruments, and they work from the keyboard because it's a theater organ. It replaced an orchestra. The theater organ was not patented as an organ. It was patented as unit orchestra, so they could get rid of a 50-piece symphony down in the pit of silent movies, and it paid one guy. But I did that, what you see in the middle, it was in a restaurant, 4-star restaurant, across the street from McDonald's, that built not McDonnell, but McDonald that built the space capsule. And that was another great story. But anyway, I maintained the Fox. That's the Fox you see on the right. They had rebuilt the console and painted and all that. So I continued on in this quest. But in 1966, I decided that I'd had enough of playing. I'd done about 15 years and made pretty substantial money. Let's do something different. So I started a music shop in Marissa. Down on the center of that top page, you'll see my dad's waving at me. I didn't notice that till several years later. That was my dad. I started this music shop selling Hammond organs. I didn't know much other about music than Hammond organs or theater organs. We started selling and do them, but oh wow! All of a sudden, kids are coming into me say, "This is a music shop. You fix things?" Well, yeah. What you got? Well, I got this guitar amp thing, and it's broke. I'm going, okay. Let me see it. He turns it upside down. What's he got? A pair of 6L6s and a 5U4. That's what's in that Harvey Wells over there. I knew it well for a modulator. 15 minutes later, I had him on the road because I knew what he did. He had to crank it up to 12 and it only went to 10. He blew it up. The finals were gone. I happen to have finals. You know, hams don't throw away anything. We keep everything. I had a pair of 6V6s, 6L6s, and a 5U4. Had to change screen resistors because you know they're going to go, and he's back on the road. Well, a lot of people heard about this crazy guy in Marissa, and bands from all over the country would start coming to me. I also was the king of hot rodding Hammond organs. I'd take a B3 and cut the legs off and make it a lot easier to carry around, and sold Sun amps like crazy. I loved all those because they were Dynakit amplifiers with KT88s in them. There weren't a normal little Fender thing. This was real stuff. And I just enjoyed this. However, one day I get this call from the Fox. Remember that thing years back? It was the stage manager of the Fox Theater. And he said, you still have those speakers? And I said, I do. He said, why don't you come up here with them? We got a little problem tonight. Because a few months back, they had thrown out these speakers you see on the left. They had served their purpose. They'd been built out in the 30s. They were providing sound. There were about 20 of them. I only took 4 of them. And this is one side of a PA I put together. I didn't know. I was just doing it. And little local groups would use them and so on. So I get this call. And I said, well, yeah, I've got it and it works. Why? He said, well, talk to this guy. This group came from California. And they were going to do a little tour out from New Orleans to New Jersey. And they weren't supposed to be out of the state of California because the sound man and the guy that owned the sound equipment was on probation. The DEA and the FBI heard about these guys. So they went, sat in the back row of the first show in New Orleans. And the group came on. Didn't have cell phones in those days. The group came on to St. Louis, but about 2 o'clock in the morning, Owsley, that was his name, packed up all the gear, finished it up. As he put the padlock on the back of the truck, the FBI, the DEA padlocked him, took him and all the equipment out. Well, of course, they get to the Fox the next morning or the next afternoon. Where's all the gear? No cell phones. So the Fox called me. George Bales, he was the guy that used to push the button and bring the console up and down when I was a kid because my arms weren't big enough to reach that button way up there, but he did it remotely. Anyway, he said, here, talk to this guy, Heil. You might be able to help him. This is a piece of rock and roll history. Many of you know what's going to happen. February the 2nd of 1970, I get this call at 4 o'clock in the afternoon from the Fox Theater, and it was Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead. They had come into St. Louis with no equipment. They didn't know it. And so I was telling him we had Macintosh amps, and we had a lot of Olsen bins, which is those big guys, JBL horns, and big monitors. What you see to the left, that's just a monitor system for these guys. And I really wish I would have had more pictures, but I didn't. I didn't take a lot of pictures. I didn't want to be a groupie, and I was scared to death here because I had done a few things earlier with Joe Walsh and some of the other guys, but you know, this was the big time. So we did our thing and went out to New Jersey. My 2 of my roadies, they went on. I had to stay back because I had things happening. But it really grew, and it grew fast. One of the things that made us was because of the monitors. You see, monitors, you'll notice how close they are to John Entwistle there on the left. I mean, there was probably 2,000 watts in his ear, but they didn't feed back. How the heck did I do that? You're going to learn. I'm going to prove it to you in just a few minutes. But all these groups were coming to me. We started building speakers in fiberglass, which was really something. Nobody had ever done that. And it was a way because they didn't ring like a bell like most of them. They were very dense. So we really were having a lot of fun. And here again, you're looking at a guy that has never tasted beer. I have never smoked a cigarette. And yet I'm running around with some of the biggest drug addicts in the world. We hit the front page of Billboard magazine because of this thing with the Grateful Dead. This little music shop in Marissa, Illinois, gets the contract for the Dead. being in the right place at the right time. I get a call, and the guy says, "You the guy that's got that big PA that we're reading about?" And I said, "Yes, sir. Who's this?" He said, "This is the Who." I said, "No, who are you?" He said, "No, this is the Who." Dumbass me. It was the Who. It was Peter Rudge, their manager. He says, "You have to get this thing out to Boston. We ought to have it by tomorrow noon." I said, "Sir, that's not possible." "Why?" "Well, we're on tour in Chicago with Chaka Khan, and it can't happen." "Well, yeah, it can." I said, We were one of the first companies to ever take gear, a chart of gear around in a 40-foot semi. Everybody else were doing it in trucks and trailers and, little buses. I rented a 40-foot semi, and because we had big stuff. I said, "I can't do this." He said, "You can. Go to the airport, rent a Tiger Air Freight, put all that stuff on there and drive it out here." And that's exactly what we did. First time in my life I ever rented a 707. But man, this was unbelievable. We ended up in Boston. The Who had been in the States with new material. They hadn't played in several years, and it was all new sounding stuff with their Who's Next tour. Baba O'Reilly and stuff like that hadn't been heard before. So the first night was terrible. They were at a Saratoga racetrack with a little column speaker stuff. Nope, didn't work. So they were either going to go back to England because Daltrey had it. "I'm not doing this until the sound check with all of this nonsense that I brought." Well, it wasn't nonsense. It was all stuff I had designed for Sun. And we had all of our fiberglass horns, long throw horns, lots of monitors, subwoofers. Nobody was doing that. I didn't know that. Because I wasn't really involved in all that at that time. Anyway, it was a great thing. We started a 6-year run with them, became very good friends, and things were really, really good. And we had a lot of fun keeping them all going. And my favorite picture of Pete, some photographer sent that to me. I thought it was the great Mooney. I could be here all night giving you stories about these guys because I lived with them for 4 years. And it was something. You see one of the monitors, that's about a 200-watt amplifier driving that radial horn right in the dead of their ears of both Rudge and Townsend. But it was all fun stuff. 1972, here comes Joe again. Now, Joe and I did the James Gang back in 70, I think it was 78, 79. And I had contracted their manager, had heard about us, and he said, "I got this little band and they're just starting. Can you take some time to take that PA out to them?" "Yeah, well." I arrived in Cleveland, Ohio. And about the second date into the tour, I found out that Joe Walsh and I were both hams, and we had formed a lifetime of friendship. We're best buddies. He's such a good guy. But he's also a ham. Wait a minute. He could tell me to do things and I could do it. And that's what he was really ticked off about, because before he'd have these ideas, but nobody wanted to listen to him. Well, I did, and we did, and away we went. And it was really, really a great thing because we had so much fun and still do. And one of the things that we love to do, that was a priceless 1956 Tweed, we called it, Fender. And we had put our own speakers. All of our speakers had white cones in them. And it just sounded a lot better. So Joe and I, we were making haste. Well, Joe had heard about a thing that happened with a guy who was a steel guitar player in Nashville, Pete Drake. He had a song in 1950. It was a #1 song called "Forever Yours." And he had a little box with a little 3-inch speaker and a little hose. it put in his mouth and he could play a steel guitar and make it talk. Joe saw that. He was a good friend with Dottie West and all those, and it wasn't big enough, loud enough. He said, so let's do it, man. So I did. I built the first live talk box, 100-watt driver, so we could do something with it. That's an interesting one. That's one of the first that somebody had bought from me. And just recently they shipped it back, including the box of the dealer where he got it. They thought that was cool. But we had a lot of fun together. But then came Peter Frampton. In 1970, let's see, it was 74. Peter, he came out of Humble Pie. And at that time, we had done every show Humble Pie had done. So we had met, but he left the band. And when he did that, why, we stayed in touch a little bit, but he was very, very, very distraught because he wanted to start his own band. And what he did wasn't very good. It was called Frampton's Camel. But in all that, he had a little gal that he hooked up with. Her name was Penny McCall. Married in my home in Marissa. A lot of that happened in those days because they either had to get a green card, go back, or get married. So, okay, that's how it happened. She called me in 1974 after the wedding and says, I'm with Peter Frampton. I need something for Christmas. Send him something. But don't send him any guitars. He's got a lot of guitars. So what did I do? I sent him a talk box. Of course I did. And man, you talk about make a friendship. Peter calls it a career because it was. The talk box was something special, really special. And I'll show you another little piece of history of how it really started by another ham radio operator in 1939. His name was Alvino Ray, W6UH. He was a guitar player for the King family. Being a ham, he was goofing around and he got one of these things. Anybody know what that is? You see that? That's a throat microphone that he strapped on the World War II fighter planes because you couldn't hear a microphone. It was so loud in the cockpit. And then you plug this microphone into the microphone input and it heard your voice vibrate. He turned it backwards. He drove this with his amplifier and put it on his wife's throat behind a curtain. And when she would sing and he would play guitar out front, it would vibrate her voice, just modulate it of the guitar. First talk box. Laid dormant till 1950 when Pete Drake picked it up. And in 1972, I started messing around with it and away we went. So history of the talk box, and it's still out there. And we're very, very pleased and blessed that we could help people. I guess that's my whole thing, is being able to help people. We were building tons. We had 35 people working in the plant, and Marissa had built a 7,000 square foot building. Those are just a few of the products. One of the interesting things that we did, you'll notice that mixer down in the corner, it was modular. And the reason I did that, I dealt in the beginning with a lot of beginning bands and local bands. And if they bought something and maybe channel 6 went out, what'd you do? You had to quit your gig and take the mixer to the dealer and he'd keep it for a month. Nope. All of those channels, everything could unplug. Again, the ham radio in me. We made our own printed circuit boards. We had our own machine to do all that. The girls did that. We traced out our own, made my own circuits. It was an amazing time in the history of musical instruments. Down on the right's kind of funny. That was my first product I built in 1966. It was crazy. But you know what? It was the first The first mixer that had more than 4 channels, and it had equalization in it. I'm an equalization nut, as you're going to find out here in a little bit. The big one is the one on the top. That was major studio board. We sold a lot of those. The amplifier was neat. It was a modular power amp. I had a 200 watt and a 400 watt. And if you had problems with it, you just take 3 screws out of the side, through the other side, unplug it. When you bought it, we gave you part of the purchase, spare modules. So if you had any problems, it only took a few minutes. Take a break, and next you know, you guys are back on the air. And that's the whole gist of that. The whole thing is being able to make things we can fix. Where'd that come from? Ham radio. Why am I here talking to you? Amateur radio. It taught me so much. And that's why I love to share this hobby. And I just wish we had hours and hours and hours, because there's so much that I can pass on. We're going to get into the rich stuff here in a minute. One thing happened though. I got tired of being on the road and all of this stuff. It just wasn't my cup of tea, so to speak, although we were having fun. Before I go out of this sequence, tell me who that band is. This was their first tour. I mean, about the second job. And you'll never guess. Nobody ever does. You'll notice the PA, we had to put a PA together pretty quickly for them, because it came up real quick as we were out with the Who and the Dead. That's ZZ Top without beards. And you can see it once I tell you. We've become great friends. All of my artists, all of my clients, we became great friends. And it wasn't because of my soldering iron. Oh, well, that had a lot to do with it. Townsend always say, they'd be passing their drugs around. No, thank you. Leave him alone. The guy's got a soldering iron. He makes it sound good. And he can drive the truck. And I did. So I was on a little different page than they were. But hey, we all understood each other. That, I guess that's the best thing that I can say. But I got out of it when punk rock came in 1980. Wendy O. Williams, you have a whole hour. I'll tell you a great story about her, but I don't have time. She drove me out of the music business. I'll give you a piece of it. You might think of the rest. She was a porno queen, Wendy O. Williams, turned rock singer, and her instrument was a McCulloch chainsaw. And we had to put a contact mic on that McCulloch, and she'd run that motor in rhythm. And I'm saying to myself, is this rock and roll? Forget it. So what did I do? I came back home in about 1980, and I get a note from my buddy. Remember I told you about Bob Cooper? He's in the satellite business, big time. So I go down to Oklahoma City. He's holding conferences in his backyard. School, how to build LNAs, how to find a satellite 260,000 miles away. He taught a lot of TV dealers how to do that. Well, so did I. And I became one of the biggest satellite dealers in the Midwest. I put in thousands of C-band satellites. I also met up with a guy that had paid $60 million for a license to have the first commercial K-band. What did he do with it? He got 10 of us to be on a test team. And what you're looking at on the top of that screen, I was the first guy to bring direct TV to the public. That was on ABC television, direct from the Central CES show, Central Electronics, inbred in my mind. That was a Central Electronics show, and we were on the air because I had done 5 years in St. Louis on ABC and KMOX radio. But we went there and introduced that. Down in the bottom left, That was the first DirecTV that was installed in a home. To the right was the front of Heil Sound in those days. I had moved up to Fairview Heights, which is just across the river. If I stood up there with that big dog, I could see the arch. RCA sent in the dogs. It was a big event because it was the opening sales of DirecTV. So I was really into this stuff, and I loved it. But where it led me, home theater. We're not talking about $200 Best Buys. We're talking $200,000 and $300,000 rooms with high definition projectors. 1980, 82. Now think about that. It was something. A laser disc and tape recorders, because where else? A videotape decks. Where else could you get to high def stuff? And I also met up with Tom Holman. Tomlinson Holman experiment. There's another hour I could talk about. I was his first boss. He worked for me for a couple of months doing some really cool things. But anyway, home theater was a big deal for me. I enjoyed it. One day, I got a call from Paul Klipsch. And he said, "That you, Heil?" And I said, "Yes, who's this?" "This is Klipsch here." He's a crusty old guy. And I'm going, this is God on the other side of this phone. He was the audio god. He invented the folded horns and all the home things. He was an amazing audio guy. He said, "I want to come and see that big PA you have." So he flew his Bonanza up to Marissa, landed in a cornfield. Changed my life. He changed my life. He's taught me more things about audio. I was with him a couple of days, and we were just doing crazy things that I never thought of, but it was stuff I hadn't heard of. A building, you see, was an old, it was a building on a piece of ground the government owned. It was a telephone exchange building. And when they didn't use it any longer, they gave it to him, and that was his lab. And you see him with one of his plexiglass speakers, corner horns, which is amazing. But I was very, very blessed to be able to be a friend and a student of Paul Klipsch. He guided me to so many things. And here comes the good stuff. I hope you can pay attention to this, because this is really where the rubber hitting the road. He guided me to the studies of Bell Labs. And he referred to it as the idea factory of the 1920s. Bell Labs was a consolidation of American Telephone and Telegraph and Western Electric. And they were the manufacturing arm of the Bell system. Check this out, ladies and gentlemen. They had 4,000 scientists and engineers assigned to this newly created Bell Telephone Labs, fully dedicated to researching how our ears worked, what frequency were most important to understand the spoken word. This was the real stuff, everybody. This was the real stuff. And gosh, who would have thunk it that this young kid would be taught by the master? He was intrigued by the fact that I didn't go to college. I didn't do any of that. I learned it all on my own from voicing that pipe organ. He also was an organ nut. He loved organs because of all the harmonics and the different frequencies and all the things you could do. Well, that's where it really started for me. There's 4 items that affect your speech clarity. Room reverb. If you're in a reverberant room, a lot of people don't think about it. Frequency response, sound pressure, and the distortion of the signal. Whoa. Well, I ended up thinking about this, and I use antenna arrays to create a directional pattern. A Yagi, a phased array, a loop, they all have directional patterns. So why not design and build a microphone element to do that? Why? To improve human speech articulation. Sitting at Joe's table one day, he said, "Hey, you need to build me a better microphone. These big ball things we're using, they're not very good. Everybody uses them, but they're not right. So he and I started working, and he was my beta tester, and I'd build things and send them to him. And whew, the first thing he wanted to know is, he said, I want a microphone that I can move around on. So here's what I did. I built a microphone that you can move around very freely, because with all these other microphones, and you know what I'm talking about, the ball things, you got to be right here. That's why you see somebody kissing that mic all the time, because if he moves off of it, nope. We want one that you can move away a little bit. And if you're watching the screen, I'm moving 180 degrees, and yet if you listen, nothing changed. Interesting. Interesting. But then came the biggie. Joe had come through town one time in his bus when I had up the 2-meter array, and he said, man, when you turned that around, I could not hear you. Do that to my microphone. So I did. And if you've never experienced it, you're about to. There's no games being played. I'm not touching any knobs. It's the creation of the Heil PR40. It has 40 dB of rear rejection. When I can do this in the front, but the minute I get past the phasing plug, it's gone. It's gone. Well, it still works, but it's 40 dB down. So we don't pick up all the monitors. We don't hear all these guys beside you. And it was just such fun to design something that nobody had done before. I didn't know that. And in doing that, we came up with the importance of power focus. I had heard about power focus, but I never quite knew about it, because all the other microphones I ever played with never did this. Well, now when we apply it to amateur radio and restrict the bandwidth of your transmitted signal and then force the available power into a narrower slot, oh buddy, makes your signal louder, and the other end of the pile up, they're going crazy for you because you're the guy. Well, you're the guy because all of your power is not being spoiled in the low frequency stuff. Then you get these guys, oh, I got a flat microphone. Well, that's not very good. It is if you're recording a symphony. We're talking about trying to fill 2.5, 3K at most on amateur radio. And we want the most articulation. Well, I certainly don't want to waste it down at 100 cycles or out at 10,000. Dr. Fletcher, Dr. Munson, how many of you ever heard of Dr. Fletcher and Munson? If you haven't, wow, shame on this industry. They should have taught this to all of us when we took the first test, because everything we do is about speaking, right? Yeah, I know there's CW, but you still have to listen. What they discovered was something really cool. First of all, our ears do not hear flat. I get these guys once in a while, oh, I got flat hearing. Well, I don't think you do. If you do, I'm going to take you to the Smithsonian, because no human has flat hearing. You'll notice that chart. As we go up in level over on the left side, and you get up around 100 dB, 110 dB, it's almost flat. That's why kids like to listen to music loud, because the louder it is, the flatter. So they hear the cymbals, they hear the mid-range vocals, they hear the bass guitar, they hear it all. But down here at 30, 40 dB, look at this. It looks like a ride at Disneyland. Too many lows make it very difficult for you to understand each word as they cover up all the important mid-range. And Fletcher and Munson, they discovered that the golden frequency is 2.5K. That's where the difference of an F and an S and a P and a B are. So why not develop a microphone to roll off that unwanted stuff under 100 cycles, Or I have microphones that do it under 300. What does that do? It's just like a balloon. That power is not wasted. It gets moved up higher. So the power you have is at 2.5K. It's just so simple. But it's just not out there. Here comes my favorite thing to do. Again, I wish we had hours. I'm going to unplug this microphone. This is a PR40, by the way. Sirius Radio just bought 250 of them. Tossed all their RE20s for all the RE20 egomaniac fans. Sorry. That was a bad microphone when it started in 1965. But to get these egos, oh boy, Rush Limbaugh used it. Yeah, but he's got $5,000 worth of processing. Nobody told you that, did they? Well, I'm telling you because it's true. I work in these studios and it bugs me because these guys they're just lying. Okay, I have two microphones here. If you haven't learned anything by now, you will never forget what's going to happen in the next couple of minutes. I have two microphones. They're both the same. They're both identical. Well, different colors, I'll give you that. They're PR22s. What is a PR22? It's a microphone that Paul Rogers from Bad Company asked me to build about 10 years ago. He said, I want a microphone that's got really nice mid-range so they hear my vocals, but the sound man, he knows what I want. So you don't have to do anything. Just leave the knobs alone. I'll do it with my microphone. And that's exactly what he did. And thousands of these are now in use because of the fact that it's so articulate. Here we go. Oh, let's do one other thing. You are running 500 watts and you're not making it through the pile up because you got some mushy, bassy, painted the same color microphone. Yes, I know. It came with your radio and it's painted the same color. They didn't build it. Some OEM guy did, put his name on it, painted the same color, has fooled all of us for decades. Well, I soon learned about that. I did something about it. It's the God's truth. And I get so infuriated when some of these manufacturers play big time. We're going to get into that in a minute too, because I prove it out. Anyway, okay, you got 500 watts and you're not making it through the pileups. What are you doing? Well, I'm going to buy a kilowatt, Heil. No problem. I'll double my power. Really? You are going to double your power. How many decibels will my receiver increase? Everybody know? 3. 1, 2, 3. 3. That's it. No, it's not different no matter how much money, who you are, what you do. 3 dB. We're talking science of audio here. So, when I bring these two microphones up together, we have doubled our input. You can see it on the meter over here. Is it going to get really loud? Yeah, it is, because it's doubling our power. We could spend $5,000 to get that extra double power. Here we go. Watch and listen. 1, 2, 3. What? Wait a minute. Remember what I talked earlier about listening? It's a mental. Do me a favor. Close your eyes, please. We're going to really, really concentrate on what's going to happen. I'm going to take away thousands of dollars. 1, 2, 3. You didn't hear anything. You know why? The human being cannot detect 3 dB. Oh, if you were in an echo chamber and everything was really right in a laboratory, maybe, but only about that much. The decibel doesn't count 1, 2, 3. It counts by tens. So you got to really raise your output to do anything. As I said, I wish we had more time. That's not why I did this. I always like to do this just to kind of wake you up. Like, whoa, it's not doubling your power. I can get you 10 dB just by changing microphones or equalization. And that's what we're going to show in a minute. But here's the other thing. Remember I told about phasing. Phasing is my favorite subject. I love phasing because you can do so much with it. I'm going to unplug this microphone. This one's still working. I'm going to put this plug on here. Oh, I forgot. I wanted to show you in the beginning. It's just a Y. There's the chord I had on the PR40 and all that. It's a Y chord. No games being played. What happens when you take two signals out of phase? This one, the diaphragm's going down. This one, the diaphragm's coming up. What do? They cancel. You don't believe it? 1, 2, 3. Oh, I'm still talking. Oh, you better believe I'm still talking, but not together. They cancel. They cancel. How many hours do we have? Oh my gosh, how much of that thing right there and this thing right here? How does that all work? I mean, how do you get all these things to work? They all have noise blankers, and they have, that magic little notch. You turn the notch and get rid of somebody. How's that happen? Of course, it's with phasing. They take that second signal, put him out of phase. What do you hear? Oh, man. Now, wait a minute. You know, I got to thinking about that. Let me go back to one mic here. This is a microphone we built for Charlie Daniels, by the way. The late Charlie, he was a great friend for about 15 years. He was a great American. We have a custom shop and we can do anything like that. We do it for a lot of radio stations and so on. Anyway, another hour for that. Anyway, here we go. Phasing. That's how equalizers work. And, you know, nobody ever talks to us about those things. They never, I don't know why. I just don't know why we don't hear what we need to hear. Because in amateur radio, phasing is how we get rid of the carrier for single sideband. Wes Shum brought sideband to ham radio. It wasn't Art Collins, it was Wes Shum in 1948, Central Electronics. The other sideband is deleted. The notch filter and the Yagi antenna is able to notch things out or build things up. All depends on which way you have it pointed. And it's how an equalizer works. And it's how I got 40 dB out of these microphones. Don't believe me? Listen to this. This is come on here. This is just let me take this off first so you can really see what's happening. When I turn this backwards, as we heard, nothing. How do you do that? Well, it's no secret. I let people know it because nobody's ever tried to copy it. We love it. Check that out. All of these microphones, I don't care who it is. They have 4 little holes. Right there, 12, 3, 6, and 9. That's the only thing that they use to get the rear rejection in. I said, no, we're not going to do that. What I did is I opened up this diaphragm, the whole bottom of it, 360 degrees. And I put it into a resonant cavity, and this is what we call this signal collection tube. And up the side come all of these different frequencies into the bottom, all the way around. And so now I can get this incredible rejection. And why do we not hear more about it? One of my favorite subjects is phased array. I had up a phased array for about 10 years when I was down in the Ozarks. And it was absolutely stunning. And here is what happened. I do believe we have just completed the installation of a 75-meter phased array antenna system consisting of a pair of coaxial dipoles mounted atop a pair of 55-foot telephone poles. We put them in an inverted V fashion, and the poles are 64 foot apart. These are 500 foot from the operating position, fed with RG213. In order to make the antennas directive from east to west, we use a delay line, a 43 foot here on 75 meters that's switched in and out of the driven element, either east or west. The downlead length is 126 foot. We take all of that coax, the downlead length, the 43 foot phasing delay line, and mounted them in a container, one of the plastic container boxes that we actually buried, and just the top of it shows. It's all sealed, so it's waterproof. But that's the way we get to switch all the components from 500 foot using one of the Amatron RCS 8V remote switches. It really works well. Take a listen to how we can get at least 10 to 20 dB difference east to west.
Like a lot of people do. Mine's usually 3 inches or so. That's just after I get done mowing it. And I know, probably, we get a dry day. I'm going to have to lay out there and mow. That's just all there is to it, because, if you leave it that high, when it starts growing in it all, it gets looking ragged pretty quick. So it's to that point now, and
the system really performs on weak signals. Take a listen as we switch to the direction they're coming from. Also note the preamplifier makes no difference on 75 meters on this signal. The preamp will, of course, make the meter read higher, but in many cases, the preamplifier does not cause the weak signal to be more readable. Check it out.
Hey, Sue. Yeah, well, I see they introduced a big display on it, and I don't know if that is their form of portable, or what that is. Your wire, that hooked up to your computer, and then did you use your handheld to go through it?
Here's some great sounding AM stations, and we were getting about 20 dB front to back.
When the leaves drop off, I'll start using it. Daryl, purchasing digital recorder. I need to do that too. That'd be nice to have. And I was going to mention to you too about your pictures with Fifi. I'd sent that out to a few friends, and one of my cousins that was.
Well, we were talking about you yesterday with Brian. Brian, the thought was that you could locate that remote receiver out at Brian's QTH, and
I think you get the right idea there. Phasing is everything, and that's how our antennas work. That's how the Yagi works. When Dr. Yagi built that, all he did was put a driven element in the middle, and then by calculations, he didn't have computers. By calculations, length of elements and placement on the boom, he could make it either go east or west, and it had rejection from the back. But what always is puzzling to me is that we don't hear about this stuff, and I want to know why we don't. It's really something, because they don't even teach us much about our radios, which really bugs me. And setting up the DSP, I was commissioned in 1999 by Dr. Inouye, that owns ICOM, Inouye Communications. And he came to me, he said, sent me a letter, and he said, I want to talk to you. He sent a picture, and in that picture was this guy. In 1982, I came off the road and got back into ham radio. And it's like, what happened? What happened? I questioned it so much because when I got back in it, my Art Collins audio was gone. It's like, what did you guys do to me? Well, the imports came in. Oh. And they were matching microphones. I just get so, there is no matching microphone like that. Painted the same colors, what they do, they build it. They don't care. They have it built. Well, I did something about it in the fact that I knew from Paul Klipsch. I learned from Fletcher Munson. We needed other things in amateur radio. I get a lot of guys, oh, I need that darn EQ. Yeah, okay. Well, I'm going to prove to you that you do. And it's another one of those glowing 5 minutes that you're not going to forget. I built this equalizer, and it hit the front page of QST. Actually, it was the article. I won the cover award. I didn't even know they had them that year because I just built it for me, and boy, oh boy, my telephone started ringing. We didn't have the internet, and my mailbox started filling up because I didn't build it to sell. I built it for you to build it. It was, here it is, a DIY, but everybody wanted me to build it. They didn't want to build it. So the plant had been closed for 10 years, and I came back on the scene, hired some of my girls back that were great solder gals, and bingo, we were back, but we were in the ham radio business. Aha. But here we go. I want you to pay attention. First of all, I forgot to tell you, never want to forget your muff. A lot of them come, a lot of microphones, ours especially, all comes with muffs. So you want to make sure that you carry your muff with you, especially in these days, because it keeps all of your breath out of it and so on. And you do not want to do this, and I hear it all the time. Guys that are 2 feet from their microphone. Well, Bill said I sound just fine. Yeah, right. Well, here's what you sound like. Well, let's turn up the gain. Really? Okay. I'm going to turn up the gain. What do you hear? You hear the room echo more than you hear me. It's an echo box. And this is a studio I built that we have all treated walls. So it's not very echoey, but it still has no transient response. It has no dynamic range. But it does when I get here, because you should never be more than 2 inches from a microphone, ever. So that's why in 1990, I think it was 98, I was the first company to bring booms to this industry. So we can put it there, and yeah, we sell thousands of these to the ham's broadcast industry, and now the podcast industry. Oh my gosh, we're so blessed. But anyway, Dr. Inouye wanted to put my equalizer into all of his new transceivers, and here's why. I should put a camera on here. There it is, flat. This is the way the microphone sounds before you tailor it. And it's the way all your matching microphones sound too. You have to do something. Well, all you have to do, think about what we learned from Bell Labs and Dr. Fletcher and Munson, 2.5K, right? All I'm doing is turning one control, 2.5K. And it's so much easier to understand what I'm saying than if I put it back, turn it back flat. There it is. You have to really listen for the S's and the P's and the B's. You got to really listen. I'll take the 2.5 and put her back up there.
Hey, Bob, we're still on the graphic.
Oh, okay. Well, you can't see anything anyway. That's the problem. I need to sometime put a camera over there. But it's all about listening and equalization for those that think you don't need it. Well, Dr. Inouye did. And he said, I got this new radio coming, and I'd like to put your equalizer in it. And so he did. So from the Pro 1, Pro 2, Pro 3, all the way out to the 7610 has that little guy in it. Dr. Hasegawa, who owns Yaesu, came to me at Dayton a couple of years later. I want to do it better. So I did. I did a parametric. A parametric EQ is incredible. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. But the problem you have there is that it's hard to adjust. That's the big deal. And we do a neat thing on our website. If you haven't been there, you should do it. We have things like all things ICOM, all things Yaesu, all things Kenwood, and it really helps you to adjust your radio. But these are all things that we don't hear much about. But boy, the broadcasters have, and we're very, very happy about that. Sirius Radio just bought a whole bunch of PR40s. Leo Laporte, who owns the network TWIT, that's This Week in Technology. He started off with one technical show years ago, back in the satellite delivered days, but his TWIT network now on the internet is incredible. And Ham Nation is one of his shows, and we're very blessed. We're very blessed by that. But it gives me a place to bring some of this great stuff to you. And things like, what do you do with your ICOM rig? You cannot plug a dynamic microphone into an ICOM, because from day one, back in the 1960s, Dr. Inouye has always had a very low gain preamp, and he uses microphones that have electret elements in them. Well, the problem with that is a lot of these electrets are really quite bad. We build a microphone just for him. He wanted me to build this. He said, build me a very high quality electret, and we did. Here it is on one of our stands. That is an ICM, almost spells ICOM. And if you have an ICOM, get that. You don't have to do anything. You plug it in and oh, buddy, it's really good. And then we also have headsets. We just brought out the new BM17, which is a wonderful little headset. And the BM17, you can get it either with the IC or with the dynamic for Yaesu, Kenwood, and all the others. It's an incredible performer. I also make my own connectors because I can't stand the junk we have. And the junk has been with us since 1960. It's all just Chinese garbage. You know what I'm talking about. Got a little bitty ring when you go to try to tighten it onto the connector. You got to have needle nose almost. That's a ½ inch. It's beautiful to come on. Then all of them, every one of them, have terrible microphone cable, both in what it is and how to use it. They usually wrap heat shrink around it or black tape and that's it. Well, no, because in time, the cable clamp doesn't work. Well, we make our own cable clamp. We make our own wire. And that is so very important. That second little wire you see there with the connector, that's for push to talk line that we bring back out. But nobody seems to ever think about these things, and I'm thinking about it all the time. Heil wire has been used now, my gosh, broadcast stations, all kinds of people have discovered it, and it's wonderful. All the cables that you have in your ham radio stuff is about 26 gauge, maybe 24. This is 18 gauge. You can pull your car with it. And there's two of them. And notice, very important, notice they are both inside that shield. The shield's 100% silver, and it's not the kind that you pick it away and you end up with 3 strands. It's really, really good braid. But there's 2 of them because the broadcast industry likes it. We want to keep that AC inside that shield. Outside, you got 2 more 18 gauge for push to talk or DC voltage. You see what you're looking at. You have AC inside the shield, DC on the outside. Hey, here to tell you, and your microphone, you're painted the same color. They're all inside one shield. RFI City. I have solved so many RFI problems by people just changing the mic cable because they got rid of that induction between the two. And how can you try to help people? Because some of them get so hard-headed. But boy, what I do is I look at the performance, and that's what I'm after. I go back to my days with Paul Klipsch and all these great engineers that used to take me under their arm. Now most of them are gone. So it's really, before I close, I want you to see my latest. I want to show you what I've been working on and what's on the market now. I hate receiver audio. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Being in the business, because I work with ICOM, they send me all the radios. Yaesu, I can pick, choose, whatever, because I help them. They'll call me, hey, check this, check that, all that. And the receivers are bad. The receiver is great. Rob Sherwood, good friend of mine, he'll tell you what the best receivers are. But nothing about the audio amp. You've never seen any specs on an audio amp. You can have a $15,000 transceiver. You'll never know what's going on inside audio-wise. Well, I'm here to tell you, and I'm not making this up, they all have 1 to 2 watts at 10% distortion. It drives me out of my mind. I can't stand distortion. Learning it all from voicing these pipe organs and listening to all these luscious harmonics and things that are there. And what you find with distortion is it just square waves everything. And oh man, it's awful. So I fixed it. And I fixed it in a very cool way. I hope you can see this little guy right here. This is a new product called the Parametric Receive Audio System. The speaker for it is it's an amazing speaker. It's out of view here. I have to show you the camera, but it's 25 watts at at 0.1. We're talking hi-fi levels. I couldn't do any of this. Paul Klipsch should come out of the grave and choke me. Can't do audio stuff with 1, 2, and 3%. 0.1. So there's a lot of companies that got their powered speaker and they just think it's hot dog. No, it's not. Because when you hear something that's really clean, oh boy. Well, what do you do about the rest of it? The rest of it has to be equalization. And that's the thing that really bugs me. Listen to what I can do with that signal.
Echo India 8 Bravo Lima Bravo.
There's the way you hear it. Put some 2.5 in it.
From Ireland.
Back to the way you hear it. Flat. Here it goes again.
Echo India 8 Bravo Lima Bravo. EI8LB calling about.
Here are a couple of usual single sideband signals that are mushy and bassy, difficult to understand. But you can add some speech articulation just by adding some 2.5 mid-range.
Of the 2 meter, a sideband, but
there's a normal sideband signal, drives me crazy.
Just for 2 meter sideband, the receivers will never compare. So it's kind of nice that, again, ICOM technology.
Flat, the way you hear it.
We're nice enough in my
There's another one, same way.
By the way, paid in the area. They gave me 5 years seniority, but I was basically starting at the bottom.
Back to flat.
Many times people who spend 20 years
in
the Navy or whatever.
You can just dial up whatever you, touch the highs and the lows. I'm just trying to make a point with that 2.5. Here comes one that's all highs, no lows. D104.
I thought, well, I wonder if I can copy that
Ready?
at about 30 words a minute. And so I speeded up the tape, and sure enough, I could copy it. I had a lot of fun the other night.
There's the way you hear it. Flat.
I thought, well, I wonder if I can copy that at about 30 words a minute. And so I speeded up the tape. And
I think you got the idea. Parametric receive audio system. We all need it because as we get older, our hearing drops off. And this is the way you can bring it back. So I thought it was time. It took me 2 years to do that project. And it's really been fun. It's been fun because I hear from people with hearing problems, left to right. Well, I put 2 jacks in this thing for headphones, separate amplifiers, separate levels. You can do a deal with a logger and an operator for field day or contesting, or we have a splitter. And you can put the left side in one and the right in the other, and you can balance them if you have a hearing imbalance. Can't tell you how many emails and phone calls I get, people thanking me because they can finally do that. And it worked. I got people using it for televisions and all kinds of entertainment things. That other one's kind of special. That's a record out. So if you want to, like all those recordings I made, I just dialed them in, flat response, bingo. And put them on a little data disk. So this stuff it's always with me. I just love this stuff. And I wish that I could have more time to help you guys. And I hope you learn something tonight because that's what I try to do is teach you. And I'm very blessed in that a few years back, I received an honorary PhD degree for music and electronics. And I'm a kid that I just barely got out of high school because I knew what I wanted to do. What was my teacher? My teacher was ham radio. Why would I not share with you what brought me to where I am? And that's what really bugs me is we don't get enough teaching. That's the problem. I'm doing 2 and 3 of these a week plus Ham Nation all over the country, all over the world. We did one in UK last week and South America. And I love it because I want to share the science. All of this was a very surprising bless. We're the only manufacturer in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They had this is only part of the display. There's another side to it. That mixer you see, we built for Quadrophenia. It was the first quadraphonic mixer built for live sound. And I built it at Pete Townsend's request. He said, I'm trying to put this new music together, but I want to do it in an arena and do it in four channels. And so we built a mixer for it. That white speaker behind is one of the 6 rear channels. And you'll see some of the amps we built, did a parametric EQ that we use. That was one of the first ones. I didn't design or I didn't develop it. George, the guy in Nashville, did it, but I was the first guy to make it modular. And then one of our modular power amps and so on and so on. And so we really have been blessed to all this, and ham radio's at the front of it. Of course, I like to thank the builders that built my organ, so the theater organ at school. And I can tell you when I get out of here in a few minutes, that's where I'm going. And I don't know if it's still hooked up. There it is right in front of me. I'm looking at it from a little side angle. There it is. So that's why I built this studio. You can't see it because they're way up above. There's 10 speakers and all that. But hey, I have fun, and I sure hope you do too. And I hope if you ever have a question, don't be shy. There is no question dumb the first time. You get to me, man. I get into some 100 email days, and I try to answer every one of them. Might be a day late then, but I never let one go by. And I'm so happy that you guys invited me to come, and I hope that it was worth the time. And let's come back and pick a subject and spend a whole hour just on phasing or whatever. There. So we have any questions that we could go through?
Come on, everybody. Questions.
Don't be shy.
Gotta have questions.
This is Don Woodward. I just bought a PR781G, and you didn't mention it tonight, but where do you put that in the family?
Oh,
PR40 is the top of the line, right? I guess.
this little guy. This little guy right here. It's a very cool microphone. It's got a little more output, but let me get the, yep, there's, I want to get the monitors going back. There, that's flat. It's very articulate, has the same qualities of a PR40. Rear rejection's great. Why did I build it? Because I roll the low end off after about 80 hertz. Whereas the PR40 gets down to 28. No other microphone does that, by the way. RE20 only gets down to about 30, and we beat them by 2. Anyway, I don't care about them. But they sure are caring about us. That's okay. Wave the flag, make sure the H is capital when you write it. We have a lot of fun with them. But, oh, you did right. This is, if I want to pick one out of all my microphones, this would be it. It's nice, and it doesn't cost very much. So there you go. Thank you. What kind of transmitter do you have it in?
Yaesu FT991A.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Top dog. Yeah, good deal. I bet you have fun with that.
Hey, Bob, I've got a crazy personal question.
Mm-hmm.
How many hours of sleep do you normally get throughout your life? You seem like you never get to sleep.
I sleep fast. Yeah. Oh, I usually get 7, 8. Yeah, I do. You know, that's what I do. If I go down, I don't get a whole lot. I can't work on 4 or 5. I got to tell you, that doesn't get to me.
Hello, Bob.
Hey.
Talking to you on my PR77 right now.
Oh, I love that microphone.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It really makes my shack look good. I was wondering what you have to say about digital to audio converters. I've been spending some time on that subject lately and was curious for your thoughts.
Well, it depends on what you're going to do with them. That's the whole thing. Depends on what you're going to do with them. When you get into the recording business and you're recording, you know, some good stuff, it's really difficult to do anything digitally. I have a little converter here that I think it cost me $80. Over my all of the slides and some of the audio that you heard, it comes from a laptop, Apple. Everything's Apple here, and I have to be able to get it into the digital world, USB input of the iMac, or the iMac 27. That's where Skype and Zoom and all that. So I have this little guy. I can't pick it up to show it to you. It's really cool. However, it's got tubes in it. Why not? It's got tubes in it. So it's good though. But there's a lot of things out there. I'm sure you have a couple.
Yeah, I just got the Modi 3 to replace a relatively inexpensive one I had, and compared them A to B, and you can really tell the difference on how much cleaner and less compressed it is.
Yeah, you're right. You are right. Yeah.
I've got questions. This is Rob. Have you seen that video? It was Alvino Ray and Stringy.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that was his big deal. He created a real thing for himself there, where he was a star over that deal. And kind of silly, but not for 1939.
Yeah, it's a cute video. Yeah.
Oh, he was a ham? Huh? Did you know he was a ham?
No, I did not know that. That adds to him. That adds to makes him cooler.
Yeah, I used to work him on 20 meters every morning back in the late 70s and 80s. We had a little group of guys in California and a couple of us out here. And yeah, that was all good stuff.
See if the FCC lets you use the talk box on the air. Yeah. Anybody else? Come on, you've got to have questions. Bob said so many great things. You got to. I bet you don't all understand. I know I don't
Bob,
understand
this
it all.
isn't really a
big
question about your stuff, but you mentioned distortion. Is there like so from a repeater standpoint and from just an audio circuit standpoint, like what kind of distortion level should you try to stay under? Because I mean, I don't know if it's possible to stay at 0.1% or measure with like off the shelf like HP distortion meters and stuff. Like what's a general target or recommendations for just like electronics audio design or radio?
If he under 5. Most
5%
people,
total?
yeah, most people can't tell the difference, but if you really are into audio and stuff, you'll know it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
The thing I discover about distortion is what we call listener fatigue. After you listen to something that's distorted for an hour, if you didn't have the distortion, your mind wouldn't be as jumbled. But listener fatigue is where it's all at.
Bob,
go ahead.
This is Newt again. Yeah, you mentioned listener fatigue. I do a lot of CW, and have you ever worked, or does your parametric thing help with the CW to bring some of that out?
I forgot to show you this. If you don't know about this, the Pro 7, this is the top dog headphone and has been for years. Why? Well, there are many things about this. And one of them has to do with what you're talking about. Wait a minute. The deal is that I really put all of the work into this that Paul Klipsch had taught me years ago. He taught me how to take a speaker outside, hang it free air, and then run and find out what the cone resonated at. Every speaker has a cone resonance. In fact, some of the cheap speakers, if you play with them, certain notes will be louder than others because they haven't leveled out that peak. I've always wanted to do it because I did it when we were building all the stuff for the bands. This speaker in a flat little thing like most headsets, mine included, I needed space, so now I got that space. And the speaker is mounted right here. And then we have the framework, and then we have the muff. So your ear is a good ½ inch from the speaker, and it won't feed back. People that have hearing aids love the PR7. The Pro 7 is great, and it's great because of how it sounds. First of all, the speaker is beautiful sounding. It has some really cool features. First of all, it goes right to left if you're left-handed or right-handed. It has a balance controls so that you can go left to right. It has a monitor out. If you are a control op and you have a logger beside you, you don't need Y chords. Plug his headphone into here and he's hearing the same thing you are. But here comes the biggie. No other headset in the world has a phase reversal. And you're going to say, come on here, camera, are you going to do that for me? You're going to say, what is phase reversal? Well, if you're listening to a pileup and you hear some little weaky signal back here, reverse the phase of these two speakers and it does that. and he comes forward. And all these de-expeditions and contesters, look at the magazines. Tell me what kind of headphones they're using. Because our headphones have always had that for the past 15 years. And they tell me that King Dogs is out there fighting for us to find new countries, that this phase reversal is a godsend because it gives them that listener fatigue to get rid of it. And it sounds so different. And that's how you can do it. If you haven't done it, you get a Pro 7. Yeah. And we have two different elements that you can plug in, a dynamic for the else and an IC for the ICOM. So it's the real deal, and that's how you get rid of listener fatigue.
You play a little organ for us?
I'm sorry?
You play a little bit of organ for us tonight?
And if you want to be bored to death, I can do that.
Oh, come on, it's not boring.
Bob, you ever pull out all the stops?
Well, some songs do, you know. Some of them that after a while.
Play Happy Birthday so he can sing Happy Birthday to you.
Oh yeah, how about that? Okay. It's going to be okay. Sometimes I get cranked up. Let's see what happens. Okay, get that all cranked up first. Now, let me get the camera on it. We'll get this little guy over here, and we'll do that little guy over there. Hey, can you guys hear me?
We can hear you just fine, sir.
You talk about digital sound. This whole organ is a digital copy of a Wurlitzer. They went to 24 different theaters, and like some of them had better sounds than other. Like, okay, here's a really neat little trumpet. Hear that okay?
Yes, it
Not
sounds
so
good.
much audio.
And they have bigger ones. And they have bigger ones.
There you go.
And all of these sounds were digitally sampled. And it is one amazing thing. I come out here to play every day after about an hour, and I end up 2 or 3 hours.
So, Bob, my 2-year-old is dancing to your organ music.
Yay.
Thank you, sir. My 2-year-old was dancing to your organ music.
Was the level okay?
Great.
Yes. What kind of organ?
This is an Allen. They say it's a sampled Wurlitzer. The stops were all digitally sampled on organs across America. Some have better trumpets, some have better tibias. There's a Steinway piano in there. There's vibroharps and all kinds of cymbals, real instruments. The theater organ was full of that. Yeah, let me show you. This is pretty cool. A couple of them. The Steinway piano is really cool.
And another new ham that has the DMR radio. Jerry scale for FNQ. The testing of the group here. They wanted me to get to Georgia State, but I realized I don't have Georgia State programmed into this.
Jeff Hogbird, please mute.
Yeah, Jeff, your radio is bleeding through.
But they have all these other little cool things, such as cymbals. They're so much fun to play, and you very seldom play the same thing each time because there's so much going on. But that's the Allen. It's a special designed by Lynn Larson, one of the premier theater organists, and he designed it. He even came here and voiced it when I bought it. It was the second one they had built. But it's a real dream, I got to tell you. And it's where I learned to listen.
You need to come to Atlanta. Our Fox Theater supposedly has a wonderful organ.
Big molar, yeah. In fact, it's being worked on. They got a substitute one in there now. They're rebuilding the whole thing. And boy, it's going to be something when it's all finished. Yeah.
Yeah, they ought to let you play it. Give you a shot at it.
Well, I was at the Fox for many years, so it wouldn't be a problem. Well, guys, I'm going to head down the road. I really appreciate you asking me to be here. Let's do it.
We really appreciate you, sir.
Thank you for your patience and when our delay getting started.
No problem. And if you want to feel this, what we talk about, if you don't have this handbook, it's something you might want to check up and see. The dealers have it, because a lot of this stuff is in there, and I should even write more, because we need more of this kind of stuff, of this information for this hobby. So enjoy it. Hope I can catch you on the air, and hey, we'll see you next time on the other side of the screen somewhere. See you on Wednesday nights on good old Ham Nation. So thanks again.
Hey, Bob.
Yes.
Before you go, can I share a great story about you with the guys?
Sure.
Yeah. About 6 or 8 years ago, I bought, this is Dale in Atlanta. I bought a new ICOM 7600 radio. And they talked me into buying an ICM mic, because they said, you designed this mic really for this radio. So I get home, and I really didn't, listening to it on my headphones, I really didn't like the sound of the audio on it. All my life, I'm used to setting things at about bass +3 and treble -3. Anyway, I'm tuning up and down 80 meters, and somewhere around 38, 40 or so, there's a group of guys on every night who were, they talk serious audio stuff. I mean, I didn't understand half of their stuff, but they sounded very technical. So I got on there and I said, listen, does anybody have the combination of the ICM mic in a ICOM 7600? And they said, no, but there's this guy on frequency with us in Chicago. Maybe he'll go off a few KC with you and help you. He knows something about that mic. So I get off a few KCs, and this really nice gentleman who I hadn't talked to in about 40 years is on the line with me, and he helped me reset all of my audio settings, and my God, it made a difference. It was just beautiful. I said, I really love this combination, and I love this mic. And he said, I'm damn glad you do. He said, I'm Bob Heil, and I made the damn thing. So, Bob, I thank you for that. I've told that story many times on the air.
I'm on the air, and I like to help people if I can. That's great.
Well, Bob, there's no reason you would remember this, but about 40 years ago, when my friend Chaz Cone, W4GKF, was running the Atlanta Ham Fest, you were invited to come down and speak.
Mm-hmm.
And they really didn't have a budget to put you up in a hotel. And we got you to stay at my house for a night. So there's no reason you'd remember that, but I enjoyed meeting you then.
Wow.
You're welcome back anytime.
Okay, guys. Well, we'll see you sometime soon. Let's come back and talk about other things. But in the meantime, go get on the radio and have fun.
Thank you.
Take care, Bob. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, happy birthday there, Bob.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Bob.
Yeah, thank you. Number 80.
Thank you, Bob.
I know I look like I'm 50 and act like I'm 12, but living with the Who for all these years, that's where I learned it. Also, my ultimate teacher, how to be crazy.
And you just need another 10 or 20 birthdays before you start getting into that flat hearing curve.
Thank you so much.
Care of my ears.
Yeah, great meeting, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, very good there, Atlanta Radio Club. I enjoyed it.
All right, guys. Before y'all run off, I tried to write down everybody's call sign. We're giving away tonight for attending to somebody a T-shirt, and the front's going to look like this. So I thought it was a pretty neat little T-shirt.
That's cute.
So I'm going to draw a little name, and I got a little bucket here, so I'm going to stick my hand in. So I'm not cheating or anything like that, in case I pull my own name out. All right, winner, hopefully you're here. KD4APP, Kilo Delta 4 Alpha Papa Papa.
Yeah, I'm here.
You still here with us?
Yes, sir. I'm here. Thank you.
All right. I would assume your address is good on the QRZ database, and I'll. What size shirt would you like?
2X.
2X. All right. Well, we'll stick one in the mail to you, and thanks for being with us tonight. For those of you that want to stick around for the next couple minutes, we're just going to run through just real quick ARC business. One thing before y'all leave, activity-wise, the ARC is hosting a Sunday in the Park next Sunday, October 11th. We'll be in Brook Run Park off of North Peachtree Road in Dunwoody. And one of our club members, Bill Perkins, is going to be hosting this. So the times will be from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. I don't have an exact location yet inside the park, but just keep an eye out on our website and come join us. Bring a radio if you have a question about something, if you want to try hooking it up, especially if you're a newbie or something, and bring it out and come join us. We'll be following CDC guidelines, of course, for COVID. So bring your mask, bring your chair, and we'll do some social distancing, but we'll also play with radio, and I think we'll have a good time. And then
add something to that really quick. If you don't have general, if you're a tech, come anyway, because you can get on the air. We'll get you on with HF, because you can use HF as long as there's somebody with a license around there. So if you want to play with an HF radio before you get one, see how to use it before you even license for it, come on over and play. Anybody who shows up gets on the air, guaranteed.
Yeah, exactly. And there'll be HTs, and I know we've seen a lot of chatter on the internet lately about people asking what's the best radio to get, things like that. So it's a good chance for you to come out, especially if you're a newbie, to come out and get some of those questions and see some of the radios in person. And like I said, if you have one and you've had problems, bring it with you and we'll see if we can hook it up and make it work. So keep an eye on the website for the exact location in the park. That'll be at Brook Run next Sunday from 1 to 7. Of course, weather depending. I'm assuming it's not going to be raining, so it should be good. But come join us, and even if for a short while, come out and have some fun playing with radio. So thanks to those of you that joined from some of the other clubs, and we're going to do some quick club business because we've been at it for quite a while now, but just to update you on some finances, membership, and repeaters. So thank you for being here tonight, and it was a great presentation. Thanks, Rob, for putting this together. Did another wonderful job this month.
Thank you. Yeah, and we need to get Bob down here for the Hamfest.
Oh, yeah.
So whoever put him up last time, you may have another house guest in June.
All right, so real quick on club business, I kind of told you about the upcoming activity. Bill's also going to be working on some L expeditions, some lunch expeditions. For those of you that are familiar, we've had some opportunities in years past to schedule this where we get together during lunch one day, and it's usually 10 meters or something, but whatever Bill decides to do, but sort of like an expedition, but just at lunch. So if you're at lunch somewhere, if you're working out of the house, you can get up on the parking deck and throw your antenna out and join the crew. So we'll have more of that coming up. Trying to do some in-person stuff if we can, obviously following all the CDC guidelines. If you don't feel comfortable coming out, that's fine too. Maybe you can get on the air and look for us or something. We'll try to publish all that information and where we'll be operating. So please do join us if you can, though. Is A still around? You got any report on membership or anything people need to know about membership?
Sure. We have currently 65 active members. Money-wise, Treasury report, we've got in our operating account, we've got $1,745. And money market, $14,480. And 2,000 roughly in our life member account. And an empty Hamfest account since we're not Hamfesting at the moment.
Yeah, and we do have about $1,200 in Hamfest prizes from the last years that we haven't been able to hold an event. We're holding on to that equipment at the moment.
Yep.
If you haven't had a chance to renew or anything like that, please do so. We're going to be doing some work on the repeaters, of course, coming up. We'll go ahead and jump into that real quick. As far as I know, Stephen couldn't be here tonight, so he said everything's in pretty decent shape. We do know that we're going to have to probably get a climber to get up in the spire there and check our feed lines and our antennas to see what conditions they're in and make any repairs that we might need to. I'm aware of an issue on D-Star. I guess it's module B might be having problems. That's on Stone Mountain, and Robin Cutshaw, AA4RC, I believe, is going to make a trip to take a look and see what needs to be done with that. So I know we've had some complaints about D-Star not quite working right. So bear with us on that. We're working on that. And then I think if Jeff's still here, we got any reports on the DMR repeater? I think you said everything's functioning properly.
I think Jeff is gone.
Must have left. So I think Jeff had said everything was functioning with the DMR. We did ask you with, do you ever in the Wednesday night linked repeater net? I think the issue with some of the equipment that was being used elsewhere to link things. So you may have a hard time, or I guess we had to shut down this past week or two, but we're working on that and should get that back up and running. And I think everything else is working. We're also working on we're looking to do a possible remote receiver back on Sweat Mountain. So we're looking into those possibilities and what the costs are and what the equipment needs are going to be on that. So we're hoping to possibly get some sort of site back up Sweat Mountain, because I know a lot of people have a hard time getting in from the north side in particular, and used to go through that as a way to get downtown. So keep an eye out for that. And I think, did anybody else have anything else to bring up that's on the board, or anybody have any questions for the club? Anything you'd like to, any suggestions, anything you'd like to see us do activity-wise coming up? Or are there any Hamfest? You'll probably hear more on the Hamfest at next month's meeting. We're working on going through some of the initial planning stages for 2021. At the moment, we're planning for, I think it was June 2nd, the first Saturday in June for 2021 at Jim Miller Park. All that's assuming this COVID stuff goes away. President Trump said it's going to go away, so we should be good for next year. But we're hoping, I know the Orlando Hamfest is scheduled for February, and they're hoping to get theirs in. The Alfred Club is doing this November, in place of their Hamfest, I think they're doing a special event station, so please support them. I don't have the information in front of me on that one, but you can check their website or keep an eye out. They'll be doing that on the 4th through the 6th, I think is the dates. I saw Mike in here earlier, but I don't know if he's still here or not, or anybody from the Alfred Club that might know. Anybody here? I guess not. So keep an eye out for that, and that'll give you a chance to support their club and have a good time, and probably collect a nice little QSL card. I think they were working on special event QSL card for that also. So any other business? Anybody have anything that they need to bring up, or any questions, suggestions?
I'm going to go to a Hamfest in Melbourne, Florida. I think it's this weekend or next, so I'll let y'all know how that looks from down here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know there's been a few that have kind of stayed on the schedule, but not many. Probably because a lot of the areas are just aren't. Although the gun show, I lived right down the street from the Gwinnett Fairgrounds, and they had a gun show I think it was this past weekend. Maybe it's this weekend. I would have been tempted just to go to see how they do that, because if you've ever been to one of these gun shows, the tables are literally 2 feet apart in the aisle, and I don't know how they get up and down those aisles with those things, but
it's because they don't have any bullets left to sell. They have room to walk around now.
There you go. All right, it's 9:30. Do any other comments, suggestions, questions, anything?
Check out the calendar on our groups.io. We try and keep activities on there. We don't have any activities on there, but watch the calendar. That's where everything's gonna show up also.
We're working on getting some things going here, so do keep an eye out and support the club. If you haven't renewed, do that, and we appreciate your supporting what we're doing here and all that goes into putting the club on and keeping the repeaters up and running. So I do appreciate that, and thank you for that. If nothing else, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right. Y'all have a wonderful evening, and thank you for coming. Somebody's screaming at somebody in the background.
They're saying second because it's a motion.
Third.
That's true, yeah.
Fourth,
fifth, sixth. Y'all have a wonderful evening. Thanks for coming.
good job, guys.
Thanks,
What a
Jim.
great
show tonight.
Good.
What a fantastic show tonight.
Hi, Jim. Bye, Jim.
That was really great. I learned a lot. I didn't say anything.